She let Predator, Alpha Cub, sleep on her chest. Alpha sighed, even we don't rest each other that much. In a universe where trust and survival are often defined by power, one human's unexpected bond with a deadly predator changes everything. She let Predator Alpha Cub sleep on her chest. Alpha sighed, even we don't rest each other that much. Explores the remarkable story of Arya Chen, a botanist aboard the colony ship Perseverance, who forms an unlikely and profound connection with a Corsavian alpha cub, a terrifying apex predator from the hostile world of Corsov 7. As the cub curls up against Arya for safety, the galaxy's most fearsome creatures, including the Velcrren, struggle to comprehend the extraordinary bond between human and beast. What makes this bond so powerful? Can humanity truly tame the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy? This story dives deep into themes of trust, vulnerability, and the power of empathy, turning the traditional idea of predator and prey on its head. With a fierce battle for survival, intergalactic diplomacy, and unexpected heroes, this HFY sci-fi adventure showcases the strength of the human spirit. Can Arya protect the cub, or will her own kind turn against her? Keywords: predator cub, Corsavian apex predator, trust between species, humanity versus aliens, HFY story, sci-fi adventure, human and predator bond, Velcrren species, intergalactic conflict, alien diplomacy, apex predators, survival instincts, human empathy, bonding with animals, sci-fi thriller, cosmic mysteries, galaxy survival, human spirit, empathy in sci-fi, predator and prey, space survival, human resilience, number human Vesalian, number predator cub, number sci-fi adventure, number intergalactic survival, number HFY Chronicles script. The cold silence of the Perseverance's quarantine bay was palpable. Alpha Drex stood on the observation deck, his bioluminescent markings flickering in the dim light. His eyes, sharp and calculating, were locked onto the human woman below, Arya Chen. She sat cross-legged on the floor, with a creature that had haunted the nightmares of entire species curled up peacefully against her chest. It was a Corsavian cub, a juvenile apex predator from the deadly world of Corsov 7. Its silver-black fur shimmered in the sterile light, and its retractable claws rested against its body. The creature, capable of disemboweling a grown Velcrren in seconds, lay utterly still, breathing softly. Arya's fingers moved in slow, rhythmic strokes along its back. Drex's pack, the Velcrren hunters, stood behind him. They watched with a mix of awe and fear, their bodies tense with confusion. Even we don't rest against each other that much, Drex muttered under his breath. His pack didn't respond immediately. They didn't need to. The sight below them defied everything they knew about survival, trust, and the laws of the galaxy. Arya wasn't just a human, she was an anomaly. Drex stood motionless, his gaze never leaving Arya. His back, usually so composed, was on edge, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut through with a blade. Thra, his second in command, stood next to him, his claws twitching nervously. The rest of the Velcrren remained silent, their bioluminescent markings dimmed in the low light. "Pull up her file again," Drex ordered, his voice steady, but tinged with something unrecognizable. The holographic display flickered to life in front of him, bringing up Arya Chen's file. She was listed as a botanist aboard the Perseverance, part of a group of humans who fled their dying homeworld to seek refuge among the stars. Nothing about her screamed heroism, courage, or survivalist prowess. She was simply another scientist, another cog in the machine. But how could she have earned the trust of a creature like that? A predator so deadly that the galaxy's most seasoned hunters avoided it at all costs. The file scrolled on no combat experience, no enhanced genetics, no advanced survival, training, just a normal human. Drex gritted his teeth. How did the cub even get aboard? Kessa, another member of Drex's pack, asked with anxiety lacing her voice. Her tail lashed restlessly, the bioluminescence in her markings flickering sporadically. Stowaway, Drex responded flatly. His eyes flicked to the display, focusing on the moment the cub was first discovered aboard the Perseverance. It hid in a cargo crate during our resupply on Station Meridian. When it emerged, it was starved and vicious. The cub had killed 2 maintenance drones before they could even seal the sector. The Velcrren knew exactly how dangerous it was. The species had faced Corsavians in battle before, and their ruthlessness was legendary. Yet here was Arya, an unarmed human, sitting calmly within inches of this apex predator. A collective shiver ran through the pack as they thought back to the security footage. Arya hadn't been intimidated by the cub's aggression. She had sat quietly, offering no weapons, no threats, only patience. And after 6 hours of circling, snarling, and posturing, the cub had finally let its guard down. It approached her, sniffed her hand, and collapsed in exhaustion. They had not expected the outcome, and neither had Drex. A strange, unsettling thought began to form in Drex's mind. Humans had always been underestimated, dismissed by the Galactic Council as nothing more than a moderately hostile species. But this was something else entirely. Commander Okoi arrived just as Drex was about to issue new orders. She was tall for a human, with dark skin that seemed to gleam slightly, even under stress. Her eyes were unreadable as she stepped onto the observation deck. She had a reputation as a no-nonsense military liaison, but even she seemed moved by the sight of Arya and the cub. "Drex, I know what you're thinking," Okoi began, her voice soft but commanding. "But you need to understand this. It's not just about control. It's about trust." Drex turned to her, his posture rigid. "Trust. That thing is a killer. It could disembowel her in a second if it woke up in the wrong mood." Okoi's eyes softened, her gaze not just on Arya, but on Drex himself. That creature could, yes. But it's not about control, it's about showing them that they're not alone. Humans have always done this. We've lived alongside predators for millennia, domesticated wolves, tamed great cats, kept snakes and spiders as companions. We learned their body language. We understand their needs. She paused, taking a step closer to the viewport. When we were children, our parents told us to be kind to animals, and that's exactly what Arya is doing. She isn't being foolish, she's being human. Drex narrowed his eyes. "You really believe that? Your species befriends predators?" "Our species is predators." Okoi smiled faintly, but it was a smile of understanding. "We're not all that different. You Velcrren were once predators too, right? But you've learned to cooperate, to live in packs, to trust each other, to understand that survival is not just about hunting, it's about bonding." The weight of Okoi's words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Drex's mind spun as he watched Arya gently hum to the cub, the creature's fur rippling with each breath. There was a momentary lull in his thoughts, where the weight of the galaxy's assumptions on humanity seemed to lighten. Could it be possible that humans, in their strange way, understood something that even the Velcrren had overlooked? "Even we don't rest against each other that much," Drex muttered, almost to himself. "How can she be so calm?" Okoi glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Because, Alpha Drex, sometimes we're not trying to control the beast. We're trying to teach it that it doesn't have to be afraid anymore." The moments passed, and Arya remained silent. The cub nestled against her chest in a deep, trusting slumber. Drex's pack, still in awe, began to converse quietly among themselves. The Velcrren, a species built on trust forged through battle and survival, could barely comprehend what they were witnessing. Thra, the second in command, approached Drex quietly. Alpha, this human, Arya, she's more than we expected. She's not just surviving. She's doing something that none of us could. She's understanding it, and it's responding. That doesn't happen. Drex turned slowly to face Thra. What are you suggesting? Thra's bioluminescent markings flickered nervously. I'm suggesting that maybe we're missing something. Maybe we've been too focused on how we fight, how we dominate. She's showing us a different way, one that we, as predators, may have lost. Drex studied Thra's face. There was no hint of defiance, only curiosity. It was rare for one of his pack to question him so openly. But the evidence was right before them. Arya, a seemingly weak human, had earned the trust of a Corsavian apex predator. Something deep within Drex's mind, something primal, made him question everything he knew about what it meant to survive. A loud screech echoed from the quarantine bay as the cub's eyes fluttered open. The tension on the observation deck reached a boiling point. The pack braced themselves, their muscles coiled in readiness. Would the cub attack the moment it regained consciousness? Would it lash out? Or had the bond between human and predator been solidified beyond the point of no return? Drex's claws flexed involuntarily, and Thra's eyes narrowed as they all watched. The cub stirred again, its body stretching as if it hadn't slept in days. It rose up, pushing itself onto its paws. Drex was prepared to act at the first sign of aggression, but instead, the cub looked up at Arya, its gaze locking onto hers. It stood there for a moment, as if deciding whether to strike or retreat. But then, in an unexpected move, the cub padded toward Arya, its tail swishing softly behind it. The pack watched in stunned silence. Arya reached out a hand, slow and deliberate. The cub sniffed her fingers and then, with a quiet grunt, nuzzled its face into her palm, curling up against her again. A collective gasp echoed from the Velcrren. This was impossible. This was beyond anything they had ever seen. Drex's voice cracked the silence. Extraordinary, he whispered. Your species is absolutely extraordinary. The room fell silent. No one dared to speak as they all watched the cub, nestled once again against Arya's chest. The entire situation was beyond comprehension for Drex and his pack. Their bioluminescent markings flickered erratically, a visual representation of their unease. Even Drex, the alpha, felt a gnawing uncertainty that he had never experienced before. How is this possible? Thra asked, his voice barely a whisper, his gaze locked on Arya and the cub. Drex's claws flexed involuntarily, his thoughts racing. The Velcrren were a species built on trust. Yes, but trust forged through survival, through shared bloodshed, through victory in battle, through unquestionable loyalty. They understood the weight of what it meant to trust another. To rest against someone else, as Arya was doing with the cub, was an unimaginable vulnerability. It was something that only the closest of family members or mates could ever share. The fact that this human woman had earned that kind of trust from a predator like the Corsavian cub was unfathomable. The pack's doubts were beginning to manifest into a quiet revolution within Drex's mind. Perhaps Thra was right. Perhaps the Velcrren were overlooking something fundamental about humanity. Perhaps their species had become too rigid, too focused on the survival of the fittest at the expense of understanding other ways of living. Drex looked at Thra, and for the first time, his authority was questioned. I think you're right. Maybe we're not just hunters anymore. Maybe we need to learn to be people first. His voice was a quiet admission of something he'd never voiced aloud. Suddenly, an emergency siren echoed throughout the ship. pulling everyone's attention away from the human and her cub. The alarm was a deep, resonating sound, a warning of impending danger. Thra's tail flicked in agitation. "It's them," Kessa said, her voice sharp with urgency. "The Corsavians. They've come for the cub." Drex's body tensed, his instincts taking over. The pack shifted into alert mode, prepared for what was to come. The human, Arya, was still oblivious to the impending danger, her gaze fixed on the cub that slept so peacefully against her chest. She had no idea that the very creature she had tamed had a dangerous lineage, one that would bring an army to their doorstep. Drex's orders were quick and decisive. The Corsavian fleet had arrived, an imposing, highly militarized force from the cub's homeworld. The aliens were here for one purpose only: to reclaim the cub. They weren't asking for it. They weren't negotiating. They would take it by force if necessary. The observation deck grew tense. Drex could feel the weight of the decision in his bones. Protect the cub, protect the human, and face the wrath of an entire alien species, or give in to the Corsavians and risk the life of the very creature that had unexpectedly bonded with a human. "Stand down," Okoi said firmly, stepping forward. She had always been a bridge between the humans and the Velcrren, but now, in this moment, her calmness was more vital than ever. "We can't let them just take her. We have to fight." Drex nodded, though it was a hard decision. "But if they push, we'll have to protect Arya at all costs." His gaze moved to the cub, still nestled against Arya's chest. He understood, now, what was at stake. As the Corsavians' ships loomed overhead, the atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation. The Velcrren and human forces had barely enough time to prepare. The air was charged with the gravity of the situation. In the midst of the preparations, Thra made a shocking move. The second in command stepped forward, defying Drex's orders. "I can't let this happen," he said, his voice firm. Drex's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing, Thra?" Thra was calm, unwavering. "We can't just let the Corsavians take the cub. I won't let it die because we're too afraid to risk everything. The human, Arya, has proven something. We need to protect her, protect the bond she's formed." Thra turned toward the communications array, overriding Drex's command. He opened a channel to the Corsavians. "I offer a trade," Thra said, his voice steady. "The cub can return to its world, but we will protect it. We will give it to you, but we demand one thing in exchange: a guarantee of peace for all aboard the Perseverance." Drex's heart raced as he watched the exchange. The Velcren's entire strategy was crumbling. Thra was putting everything on the line: his loyalty to Drex, the pack's safety, and the fragile truce between the Velcrren and the Corsavians. The Corsavians' response was not what Thra had expected. The fleet commander's voice crackled through the comms. "You misunderstand. We don't just want the cub. It holds the key to something much greater." There was a long pause. "Return it, and you will have peace. Refuse, and we will not hesitate to destroy the Perseverance." Thra's gamble had put everything at risk, and now the pack was facing the consequences. The Corsavians weren't just after the cub, they wanted something more, something dangerous. As the standoff continued, Drex realized that they couldn't just let the Corsavians take the cub. It had become something far more valuable, a symbol of trust, of humanity's surprising strength, and of the bond that had formed between Arya and the creature. Drex turned to Okoi, his mind racing. "What is this key the Corsavians speak of? What are they after?" Okoi's face hardened. "I don't know, but I think the cub was never just a weapon. It's tied to something ancient, something buried on its homeworld. The Corsavians are likely after its genetic secrets." The tension on the observation deck thickened. The very thing they had fought to protect, the fragile bond between Arya and the cub, was now the key to a conflict that could change the galaxy. In the end, it was Arya who made the final decision. As the situation escalated and the Corsavian fleet prepared to attack, Arya stood up, the cub still nestled securely in her arms. The rest of the crew watched in stunned silence as she walked forward, unarmed and resolute. "I'll go with them," she said quietly. "I'll take the cub back to its world. Let's end this before it destroys us all." Drex's mind raced. Could he trust Arya? Could he trust humanity to find a peaceful solution? In that moment, he realized something. Humanity had shown them what it meant to trust, truly trust, when everything else seemed impossible. The Velcrren, the Corsavians, all the galaxies of the known universe were nothing compared to what a human like Arya could accomplish with nothing but her will. As Arya walked toward the awaiting Corsavian ships, the galaxy held its breath. The screen faded to black. The final shot was of Drex, his gaze fixed on Arya and the cub, a look of quiet admiration on his face. "What will happen next?" he whispered to no one in particular. "Will we ever truly understand them?" The screen lingered on the image of Arya and the cub, the faintest glimmer of hope shining in the darkness.